No price talk and no Lambos. This is not another crypto podcast. Welcome to Ignition. I'm your host, Jillian, and each week we will be looking at the problems solved by blockchain. I'll be going deep with the people building the apps and communities which are changing the world around us. Good morning, and welcome to EOS Dublin's podcast called Ignition with me, Jillian Gotzel. Now, today I have a great chap on the line who's been listening to me rant and rave about Ireland for the last 20 minutes. And we're not going to talk about Ireland in this podcast, we're going to talk about blockchain. So Jan Smit, who is the CEO of DutchEOS, is on the line with this morning. Good morning, Jan.
Good morning, Jillian. I learned a lot about Ireland. So
I know, yeah.
Nice introduction.
I must do a separate podcast of all my ranting and raving. Actually, I've done loads of them anyway. I can dig them out. But anyway, we're going to about blockchain. So, Jan, we were having a laugh over English, the language, and second language. I gave a very bad joke, which you didn't understand because of the connotations and the vernacular here. But you were laughing. You were saying Jan Smit. It's like the John Smith of names in Holland, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So, but you are not the John Smith. You're much more exciting than that. So, tell me a little bit about your background, college degree, first job, stuff like that.
Yeah, so university, I studied physics.
Ooh.
I'm a real data guy. I like numbers and exact stuff. But when I graduated, I thought, I don't want to be in a research lab. And then there were lots of consulting companies who were interested in hiring physicists and mathematicians and people like that, just to crunch numbers and spreadsheets. So I ended up working with Bain & Company. So Bain & Company was just starting a new office in the Netherlands, and they do strategy consulting. So I did that for the first 6 years of my life, which was great. I saw a lot of businesses and learned a lot about them. And also they offered to pay an MBA, which was great.
Ooh,
so I lived in Chicago, went to Kellogg for a year. My wife and I moved there and had a fantastic year over there. Went back to Bain for another 2 years, and then I felt I wanted to work for a real company. So I started working for a customer of the consulting company, which is called LeasePlan. And LeasePlan is a car leasing company, and actually it's depending how you measure it, it's usually one of the biggest or the biggest car leasing company in the world. So they lease about 1 million cars. And first I was head of strategy, but then I moved into a line role and I became a CFO of the Middle Eastern operations. And we moved to Abu Dhabi for that in the UAE. So I lived there for 5 years with the family. And by then I started to have kids and we had a great time there. And after 5 years, I moved to Kuala Lumpur because there I started together with a new team, the leasing operations in the Asian countries. So Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia. Did that for 2 years. And then LeasePlan was taken over by a British private equity company. So it was owned by Volkswagen until that time. Then it was sold to TDR Capital, a British London-based private equity company. And one of the things they did is decided that they wanted to stop investing in growth in new countries and just milk the existing countries. So our newly set up operations in Malaysia were closed. So that was the end of my career at LeasePlan. But by then, because I've always enjoyed technology and I've always been fascinated by technology and how that relates also to economy. And then, of course, blockchain is a great thing. I've always been following that, investing in it a little bit. And then, so when we as a family came back, I had a bit of time and resources to actually try and see if we can make a living out of it.
Actually, may I jump in and ask you a question there? As a numbers man and CFO, like when you first heard about Bitcoin, did you go Ponzi or did you go, ooh, what is this? What was your initial reaction when you first heard about it?
I was very intrigued. I mean, in those early days, it was. I know there were always people thinking that it could be one time the world currency, but that was not my thinking. I thought, okay, but this has very good use cases, and maybe in some countries which are less stable, like Zimbabwe or something, or Argentina or Venezuela now. So yeah, that's still a question to me whether if cryptocurrencies do catch on, whether it will be in the second world countries or will it be in the first world countries. And I'm leaning a bit more towards the second world.
I think I'd agree with you because in a developing country, you often leapfrog over things that have been tried in the old world, if you like, and have been discovered to be not so successful. So like, I think isn't China very much ahead in terms of like in energy and sustainable energy, because it didn't have a lot of the old legacy fossil fuel setups, I think. Am I right? Is that urban myth, or is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know they are by far the leader in solar energy panels, and I've never researched why that is exactly. I've always thought it's because they have a huge home market. There's 1 billion people, and if they start buying, of course, and that gives a lot of scale, and that brings down the cost, and maybe because of that they were able to also.
Yeah, I think there is an element though in developing countries. Whereas I say they don't have to go through all the pain that the old world went through, or pain or pleasure, if we're going to look at it, because they go straight forward. So I think you're right. So anyway, so I interrupted you there. You were back home. Were you back home after that?
Back home in Amsterdam, yeah. Sorry. So in 2018, back in Amsterdam, and actually middle of 2017. And of course, that was the time that EOS started. And so I was actually working briefly as a portfolio manager of a crypto investment fund. So that was a nice way to learn the market. 2017 was, of course, still fantastic. But it gave me a nice position to look at all the different cryptocurrencies and blockchains that existed. And that's also when I got to know about Dan Larimer, of course, with BitShares and Steemit. And we invested in Steemit. And of course, I was aware that he started his new project with EOS. And first, we were thinking with the fund to actually become a block producer, but that was clearly not the same business. So at a certain point, I said, I do want to become and try and block producer. And I've met 2 other guys, Joost and Arjen. You'll see them on our website, DutchEOS.io. And they have been experienced in mining. And of course, block producing is not mining, but still, they knew a lot. Similar, indeed, in many ways. So we set about, but we started a bit late. We started in March 2018, and I think the more successful teams had already started a few months before that. I also met with Boy Maas, who was heading EOS Amsterdam at that time, to see if we could team up. But he had just, in March, he had just registered the site and the name, EOS Amsterdam. I was also thinking of calling ourselves EOS Amsterdam, but he took the name and he already built a team with Red and Jetse and some other people. So we went our own way. So with the 2 other guys that I met, we started DutchEOS. And so we've been a block producer on the EOS chain from day one. But
is it strange having 2 block producers in the same city?
It's a small country, but I think 2 is fair. I mean, the UK, they have 4 or something. Ireland, I know only 1. EOS Dublin.
Yeah, Dublin, yes. Yay.
It was very surprising that Germany and France were, until very late, they were not in the game. So you see Ireland, UK, you saw Sweden, you saw Spain, you saw the Netherlands, but there was no France, there was no Germany. So we were briefly actually thinking, because indeed Boy and Red were going for the Netherlands, for EOS Amsterdam, maybe we should be EOS Germany. I mean, perhaps people wouldn't be able to tell that we are not German. But we didn't do that in the end. We wanted to stay authentic, and so we stayed with home. I think the Netherlands is a big enough market to have 2.
It's a great place. I was there in Amsterdam last year for my first time, actually. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's a brilliant country, brilliant city. So how would you define DutchEOS? What do you do? What type of community stuff are you involved in? And we'll talk about EuropeChain in a minute, but just sort of the stuff you do.
So what is DutchEOS? DutchEOS are 3 guys. And in the Telos world, I mean, we've not been very successful in the EOS world, so we pivoted towards Telos, where we were very early on a contributor and did a lot of work, and were really able to prove our value. And I think because we are a team of 3 clearly visible people, that is actually in the Telos world still quite unique. There are many one-person teams in the Telos world. Obviously, there's less revenue, so it makes sense as well. But I think as if you choose block producers, you want a stable, reliable. You want to know that there's a stable, reliable team behind it, and I think that's where we at least in Telos make a difference. So
I learned a very good word from Douglas in Telos. Gruntled. Yeah. Have you heard of the word disgruntled?
Yes, that I know.
Yeah, there's actually gruntled is actually a word as well. So it's the opposite of disgruntled. So gruntled is happy in your skin. Yeah. So next time you're feeling happy, say, I'm feeling particularly gruntled today.
What?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. So
Yes.
you're a 3-man team. You're fairly
Yeah.
stable.
Team. So, and we're a bit older, I think, than average teams. At least I am. So I am able to contribute mainly as an ambassador, and especially on the finance side. So I've been taking up the role as the RAM administrator, it's called. It's kind of the central banker of blockchain, which sounds like a conflict of course. Blockchains need to be decentralized, and why do you have a person who decides by himself what should be the RAM price? But that's something we decided on to give just the market and then people guidance, and try and avoid these heavy speculations that you saw earlier on EOS. But that's a strength of this team, I think, just to be a very reliable and trustworthy team and take up such roles. Joost is also active as a board member on the Telos Foundation. So technologically, I have to say we are not setting the fence, so to say. We have a very reliable operation. We have hardly any drop blocks. We are pretty fast, but not the fastest. We just try and run a very reliable operation. But technologically wise, I mean, the newer stuff doesn't come from us, to be honest. So we just try to be a very reliable, a very involved team, very much trying to help the chain as a business. So that's where we really been able to connect with Telos and with Douglas, who I think has set things up fantastically and very admirable.
And then the other thing I want to ask you then is EuropeChain.
Yeah.
Which you are the CFO, which makes sense because you're the money man. You're the
exactly.
Next time I need a loan, I know where to go to.
Yeah.
So EuropeChain, I'm going to read the mission statement. It's to build and support a network of open, business-first EOS-IO blockchains, which are EU regulatory compliant.
Yes.
Yes. So tell me a little about EuropeChain and your co-partners in there.
Yeah. So it started with Red. So Red is a very commercial person, which is quite rare, experienced commercial people in the EOS sphere. But he saw that businesses are interested to run applications on the blockchain, DApps, decentralized applications. But a lot of things make it actually very difficult for them. And one of the main things is compliance with European law. As an existing business, you want to be in compliance. You don't want to jeopardize your existing business. So you need to know that you can be in compliance. And GDPR, of course, is one of the big worries.
Huge
Everybody
things,
knows GDPR and blockchain, how to marry those. That's a challenging question. And we know, based on our experience and based on Red's experience, that we can marry these up. You have to be just very thoughtful on how you set things up, but it's definitely possible. So
I think it's interesting to point out that GDPR, people might think, oh, that's an EU problem. If you were in the rest of the world doing business with EU country, you have to be GDPR compliant. So it's not just for those pesky Europeans in the EU.
Absolutely. So if you want to run a global business and you have personal data from people on the blockchain, you're better to set it up in a GDPR compliant way, because then you know that you probably will also cross the boxes in other countries. At least that's the situation currently, until the US puts in even tighter laws or something. But currently, indeed, also for non-European businesses, it can make a lot of sense. So yeah, you're very right. Thank you. So Red came with that. And I think immediately a lot of European EOS block producers realized that was very true. So we started working on that, and we made a core team, so to say, which is with EOS Dublin, of course, with the Crypto Alliance. And yeah, so Red and I got to know each other over the last year. And I think I compliment him as well in the finance area. So that's been working well so far. Yeah, and then we're very busy working out the details now, because the general idea is clear and it's easy to communicate. Of course, you really need to know how to actually do it before you can start getting applications and companies signed up.
So it'd be like basically the purpose is that companies that want to get onto the blockchain, they could look at the EuropeChain and say, do you know what? I'm going to go to those guys and they can help me, like a reseller or like an extension of their own tech team. And they'll have all the EU compliance stuff already built in.
Yeah, so they can come directly to us, but we will have the traditional reseller model. So in the future, we will refer you to our resellers who will help you implement your applications on the blockchains, which then indeed are run by EuropeChain. So we run them, and the resellers, they help the customers implement things and maintain things.
Perfect.
That's the model.
Yeah.
And the other thing which is interesting to existing companies is that they just want to have a normal invoice for the services, a euro invoice. They don't want to have to worry about maintaining an EOS balance or a Telos balance on an account, having to account for it, having to every month, those tokens, of course, go 30% up and 50% down in the same month. So as a CFO, I know how much of a nightmare it is to have crypto or any foreign currency on your balance sheet. So just being able to receive invoices in euro is also an important USP. Yeah. That we offer.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So then going forward, Jan, so what's taking most of your time now? Is it is the DutchEOS? Is it Telos? Is it EuropeChain? Are you dividing yourself in little pieces or?
To an extent, yes, but it's now, so initially, of course, early 2018, it was definitely DutchEOS and then the EOS chain. And then starting last summer, it moved towards Telos. So it was DutchEOS in combination with Telos. Telos launched last December. I've been very busy as a RAM administrator in December and January to monitor the prices and keep things under control. But that's also under control now. So now I spend, I would say, 70% of my time on EuropeChain.
Wow.
And I think that'll hopefully stay that way. We need to get financing to really build a team. And if that is successful, I foresee that this will remain my main occupation for a long time.
Perfect. Well, with somebody with your maths background, we expect a lot of you, Jan. I'm sure you'll steer the ship very, very well. And then just a last question for you. So EuropeChain is where your focus is at the moment mostly. When do you think that'll become an actual thing? Is it years? How long is the roadmap?
I think these sales cycles will be long. I mean, it's similar, I think, with the car leasing industry in that sense. It's a B2B sale. It impacts a lot of things. I mean, IT maybe even more than a lease car, or for sure even more. And before you have the relationship built and you've started developing and it's tested, and before you then start getting revenue, or that we as EuropeChain start getting revenue, you're talking about 1 to 2 years, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
But this is not, if your customers are traditional businesses, this is not going to be overnight. This will take a long time. That's also why the financing is quite crucial, because we need to be able to relatively comfortably, and I wouldn't say that we need huge amounts that we can just go on holiday every week, but there needs to be enough money and certainty that we can play this game for a long time and have a real chance to get a crucial volume of customers.
Wow. No, it sounds very exciting. We will come back to you again to catch up with you and see what's been happening. Maybe towards the end of the year, we'll catch up. Yeah, no, it's super. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We've been listening to Jan Smit, who is the CEO of DutchEOS, who's involved with Telos and also with EuropeChain. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Jan.
Thank you, Jillian. It was a pleasure.